Hi, how's it going? My name is Tad, and I'll be talking about my reflection and learning journey for the module Interactive Media Project Workshop 2. Looking back on the first 8 weeks of this module, I think the biggest change for me has been how I see interaction design. At the start, I admit that in terms of design, I was more focused on solving a problem, making things work, or making something aesthetic or something that looks good. But through the lectures during the week, the readings, the workshop, and even on some of the artworks we've explored, I kind of started seeing interaction design as something that can shape behavior, create meaning, and even question the way we live with the technology. So the first thing that stood out to me in the first week was the history and the shift from traditional art ideas into the modern and electronic and interactive art that we have today. It was from the Cham's challenge to authorship, the Russian constructivism's engineering logic, to the physical presence of minimalism. The evolution to me became clear. Seeing cybernetic works like The Sensor really made it click for me that artists have become thinkers who design interactive systems and feedback loop rather than just static things or using the typical mediums that we have in traditional art. In first week's workshop, we discussed the cybernetic serendipity paper, on which I presented on Charles Susuri's early computer art. It totally flipped my perspective. He didn't treat the computer like a fancy printer. He saw it as a completely new way of thinking and making art. It made me realize that the machine is more like a creative partner rather than just a technical tool. It definitely raised some big questions in class like, is generated image still art if a program made it? But for me, the takeaway is that art isn't just the final picture, but it's also the logic and the tinkering in the hidden in the code that made it creative. So the procedural drawing and game-based exercises we did in week two were one of the first moments where things started to make a little bit sense for me. At first, they kind of felt simple and playful, but they actually changed how I think about creativity. Instead of trying to control every outcome, I was creating rules and letting results emerge from them. What stood out to me was that the rules did not reduce creativity, they actually created it. That made me think differently about authorship too, because the final results were not only shaped by me, but the system and chance all at once. We also had a look at algorithmic art and music, where it turns the artist into something more of a system designer who builds the rules, but also lets the chance kind of drive the outcome. We looked at Xenaki's use for probability for sound, or even Moore's randomized cube edges. The art here is kind of setting up a creative engine while embracing the unpredictable. It's almost kind of like a partnership between the human providing the logic while the machine provides like the infinite unexpected variations. The week after, we looked at Roy's Ascot's Change Painting, where it turned the viewer into a co-author by using sliding glass panels that allowed for infinite rearrangements. I learned here that in storyboarding interactive pieces, you kind of stop mapping a single story and start mapping possibilities, sketching out the if-then, input-output moments of the audience, touch actually changing the art. The sound weeks made me slow down in a completely different way. The listening walk around the campus seemed simple, but it made me realize how much sound I normally ignore. Having to focus only on listening made me more aware of atmosphere, rhythm, space. Then, when we were editing the records in Audacity and building short composition, I started to understand that even small technical edits like trimming, fading, or stretching sounds are also creative decisions. They changed the feeling of the work, and I think that this part of the module made me more sensitive to experience as something that is not only visual. It also made me realize that listening itself can be part of the design practice. And when we looked at algorithmic music tools, I started seeing a clear connection back to the earlier rule-based drawing that we did. In both cases, I was not just making a final piece directly, I was setting up a system that would generate outcomes, and what I found interesting was that the system itself became kind of part of the artwork. It made me think about interaction as something alive and unfolding rather than fixed. I think this helped me understand the creative potential of like rules and algorithms much more clearly. The critical design phone stand was my aha moment. Usually I try to make objects more efficient, but this task was the opposite. It was about interrupting habits. It felt strange at first to design for discomfort rather than convenience, But it also taught me that design doesn't always have to solve a problem. It can also be used as a tool to make a stop and reflect on how we actually live. I realize I'm drawn to where systems and meaning meet, but I also have a habit of rushing into making things before the idea is actually ready. Weeks 6 and 7, learning to use the laser cutter was a great lesson. Experimenting with how different materials forced me to think about why I was choosing a specific medium, shape, or engraving, and not just how to hit print. It turned the process into something a bit more thoughtful for design. Moving forward, I want to blend all the systems, the sounds, the physical arrangements, and make things more intentionally. This module has taught me that interactive media isn't just about making things or objects react, but it's also about shaping experience and behavior. That shift in the mindset has generally changed how I see my practice, and it's exactly what I'll be hacking away in my next project.